They called her a temptress, a queen, a goddess reborn. But behind the legend of Cleopatra was a woman brilliant, fearless, and fiercely determined to shape her own destiny. She wasn't just the lover of powerful men, a footnote in Rome's story. She was born to be remembered for what she truly was, the last pharaoh of Egypt. Her story is one of power, intellect, and unbreakable will. So let's peel back the layers of propaganda and meet the real Cleopatra. Cleopatra, the seventh Philopator, was born not into a world of sand and pyramids, but into the glittering cosmopolitan city of Alexandria. It was a hub of science, art, and immense power. And while she ruled Egypt, she wasn't Egyptian by blood. She was a descendant of Ptolemy, one of Alexander the Great's most trusted generals, making her lineage Greek. But her heart belonged to the Nile. She was the first of her dynasty in 300 years to bother learning the Egyptian language, a gesture that earned her the love of her people. When she ascended the throne at just 18, she inherited a kingdom fractured by internal strife and overshadowed by the looming power of Rome. Her first move as queen wasn't to declare war or build grand monuments. It was a calculated, desperate bid for survival. As chaos erupted within her own family, with her brother trying to usurp her power, Cleopatra knew she couldn't stand alone. She needed an ally, and the most powerful man in the world had just arrived in Egypt, Julius Caesar. He was brilliant, ruthless, and the undisputed master of Rome. Getting an audience with him was impossible. Her brother's forces had her under lockdown. So Cleopatra made one of the boldest moves in history. Legend tells us she had herself wrapped in a fine carpet and smuggled past enemy guards directly into Caesar's private chambers. When the carpet was unfurled, there she stood, a young queen. Not just beautiful, but radiating an unshakable confidence that captivated the world-weary general. It wasn't just a dramatic entrance. It was a masterclass in political theater. Caesar was intrigued, then impressed, and finally allied. With his legions at her back, she reclaimed her throne. For a brief, shining moment, the future of Egypt looked bright once more. The alliance between Cleopatra and Caesar quickly blossomed into something far more personal. They were two of the sharpest minds of their age, bound by a shared ambition and a magnetic attraction. In 47 BC, she gave birth to their son, Ptolemy Caesar, whom she nicknamed Caesarion, or Little Caesar. This child was more than a symbol of their love. He was a potential heir to both Egypt and Rome, a fusion of two great worlds. Cleopatra even traveled to Rome, where she lived as Caesar's guest, causing a stir in the conservative city. Their partnership was a powerful fusion of love and politics. But their shared dream of a Greco-Roman empire was built on a dangerous foundation. When Caesar was brutally assassinated on the steps of the Senate in 44 BC, Cleopatra's world shattered. The protector of her throne and the father of her child was gone. Rome spiraled into a bloody civil war, and the Queen of Egypt was once again left isolated, facing a hostile world alone. From the ashes of Rome's civil war, a new figure of power emerged, Mark Antony, a charismatic general and Caesar's most loyal lieutenant. When he summoned Cleopatra to Tarsus to question her loyalty, she knew this meeting could decide her fate. Instead of arriving as a nervous subordinate, she staged a spectacle designed to awe. She sailed up the Kidnus River on a magnificent golden barge with purple sails, fanned by servants dressed as cupids. While she herself was adorned as the goddess Venus, the air was thick with the scent of perfume. Antony, who saw himself as the embodiment of the god Dionysus, was completely captivated. He was enthralled not just by her beauty, but by her razor-sharp intellect, her wit, and her sheer audacity. They became inseparable, ruling the eastern territories as living gods on earth. For a decade, they shared a life of passion, power, and partnership. But back in Rome, Caesar's adopted son, Octavian, watched their growing influence with cold fury, viewing them as the ultimate threat to his own ambition. The powerful union of Antony and Cleopatra was a political nightmare for Octavian and his allies in Rome. They saw it as a decadent Eastern alliance threatening to corrupt Roman values. Octavian launched a brilliant propaganda campaign, painting Antony as a man bewitched and controlled by a foreign temptress. He skillfully framed the inevitable conflict not as another Roman civil war, but as a righteous defense of Rome against the Egyptian queen. In 32 BC, the Roman Senate officially declared war pointedly, not on Mark Antony, but on Cleopatra herself. The stage was set for one of the most decisive naval battles in history. In 31 BC, at the Battle of Actium, their combined fleet, glittering with gold and purple, met Octavian's more agile ships. The fighting was fierce, but as the tide turned against them and Antony's lines began to crumble, Cleopatra made a fateful decision. She ordered her squadron to break through the blockade and flee. Antony, seeing her ships retreat, abandoned his men in the battle to follow her. That single, desperate act of retreat sealed their doom. After the disaster at Actium, it was only a matter of time. Octavian's legions marched relentlessly towards Egypt, and the once mighty kingdom of the Ptolemies crumbled. With his army defeated and his honor lost, Mark Antony received a false report that Cleopatra had taken her own life. Devastated, he did what he believed was the only honorable thing left to do. He fell on his own sword, but the wound wasn't immediately fatal. As he lay dying, he learned that Cleopatra was still alive, barricaded in her mausoleum. Her servants hoisted his body up the walls, and he died in her arms. When Octavian's soldiers finally broke into her refuge, they found a queen in mourning, but her will was not yet broken. Octavian's plan was to parade her through the streets of Rome in chains, a living trophy of his victory. Cleopatra would have none of it. She would not be a spectacle for her enemies. She made her final, defiant choice. She requested figs to be brought to her, and hidden within the basket was an asp the sacred cobra, a symbol of divine royalty. Its bite was her final act of power. The Romans found her lying on her golden couch, dressed in her finest royal robes as the goddess Isis, looking not defeated but serene, as if she were merely sleeping. Her two most loyal handmaidens lay dead beside her. Even in defeat, she had orchestrated her own magnificent exit. Moved by her courage, or perhaps by a sense of history, Octavian granted her final wish. He had her buried with full honors beside Mark Antony, uniting the lovers in death as they had been in life. For centuries, her story was told by her Roman enemies, who painted her as a manipulative seductress who brought great men to ruin. But history now sees a clearer picture. She was a brilliant scholar who spoke at least 9 languages, a shrewd political leader who held her kingdom together against impossible odds, and a woman who dared to challenge the greatest empire the world had ever known. Cleopatra was more than a legend. She was a queen who ruled, a mother who fought for her son, and a woman who chose her own destiny, the last pharaoh of Egypt, and a goddess forever. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into the life of one of history's most fascinating figures. If you enjoyed this, please give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell for more stories from the past. See you next time.